My name is Alinafe Mlamba, a Malawian journalist, and I welcome you to this episode of The Telescope, Impact of Flooding on Children Living in Flood Survivor Camps. In this episode, we are looking at the threats such as contraction of waterborne diseases children living in the camps were exposed to. As we all know, due to poor sanitation in most camps, diseases such as cholera always cause problems. On the night of 13 February 2022, 52 families from Kwilinde and Magawa villages in Machinga, a district in the southern region of Malawi, fled their homes as water swept through their villages due to heavy rains and flooding. They sought shelter at Chinguni Primary School, where they stayed for a month until they returned to their homes. The camp strictly accommodated women and children. From the 95 individuals, 45 were children. But one was lifelike, living at the camp, 10-year-old Mayamiko, not her real name. Bimon's poor water and sanitation facilities forced her to skip classes as she had to stay indoors due to on and off persistent waterborne diseases.
The water was contaminated and I usually had an upset stomach. As such, I was just staying in the class which was designated as our home. I was just drinking despite the water being drawn from unsafe swamps.
Equally, Richard, not his real name, aged 13, decries poorly sourced water which he believes often made him have an upset stomach.
It was hard for us to get water. Even for us to get water to bath was hard. We would draw water from swamps and a river since there was no borehole. The water used for cleaning, cooking and drinking was drawn from swamps and sometimes a river, and in the end made me have an upset stomach.
Despite the camp being at a learning institution, Richard did not get a chance to attend classes due to the absence of water and hygiene facilities.
I wasn't going to school. I had no soap to wash my clothes and the hygiene condition could not let me be in class. We only received flour as part of relief and I did not receive relief aid to support my education.
Belita Jonathan and her 6 children were also at Chinguni Relief Camp. The hygiene conditions, according to Jonathan, forced her to travel a 2-hour distance so that she can get safe water for her children, as one way of preventing her family from getting waterborne diseases, as her family was at risk.
We were using water drawn from swamps and mostly from dams, and the water was usually contaminated. Both children and adults had on and off diarrhea and malaria because of such water. We would use a bucket and walk to Ronde Township for us to get clean water. And mostly, it's only adults who had to go to fetch water since it's a long distance. If we were to leave at this time, it would take us 3 hours or so for us to reach a safe borehole. We would leave at around 1 p.m. and return home after 4 or 6 p.m.
Remember, this is episode 1 of The Telescope, Impact of Flooding on Children Living in Relief Camps. On 2nd May 2022, Malawi confirmed its first cholera case after a 3-year break. The case was confirmed at Machinga District Hospital, news which, according to village headman Kwilinde, made the flood survivors distress, considering water, sanitation, and hygiene situations at the camp.
Mazi amakara kuvutikira kwapeza kwake mazi ake amatunga zitagwe maso
It was hard to find clean water. The water was being drawn from swamps. Even for the toilets, most people were leaving themselves anywhere due to inadequate toilets. And then there was a huge risk of cholera, and the children were at risk because the water that was readily available to them was untreated. We were left with no choice. Most of these people were scared of cholera, especially when the case was reported. But they had no choice but to use the water that was available to them.
Koma chifukwa kuti nanga tikanapanga bwanji kupeza kuti anthu aja timagwisa ntchito bemazi omwe aja tipeza kuti chithandizo chicha chinali chopizo chochulukirapo koma kwa anthuso ambiri kuti anali pamenepa amakhuzidwa kwambiri ndi imene zinagwira ndithu chakuza za kolera zimenezi.
Having clean, safe and affordable water by 2030 is one of Malawi's sustainable development goals. For this to happen and to safeguard public health in such instances, public health expert Maziko Matemba is of the view that government should have a strategy and invest in adequate infrastructure and provide sanitation facilities in such a setup.
We have committees within our councils which are supposed to be enacted so that they can provide different public services, more especially water and sanitation, because these are key in preventing diseases of different nature. Because as you know, when the 5 people are displaced, maybe they're put in a same place, maybe in a tent or maybe in a church or in a school. And most of the issues of water and sanitation becomes a challenge because you're trying to manage different families at the same place. So I think time has come now that as a government, they need to come up with a plan and also try to enforce that plan in the sense that they need to make sure that indeed people are displaced. What are the basic services which can be provided in that environment? Because once we have that package and it's enforceable by DODMA and the councils and also maybe by government, that is the way to go. Because we might be having these floods, and we've been having them for a long time now, because of the issue of climate change and other issues. So we cannot run away from having some of these challenges as a country.
The situation at Chinguni is clearly just an isolated case, possibly happening in many other camps. Water sanitation and hygiene specialist Mike Chimaliza fears children are prone to be affected by the situation.
If you look at the areas that are crowded and they don't have access to safe water supply and sanitation services, you find that children can easily suffer from waterborne diseases. And we are talking, when you talk about water-related diseases here, we are talking about, waterborne diseases. These are the ones whereby the microorganisms can be, carried through water. And after you ingest, the water, then you find that you get, mostly common is diarrhea. If you go into the health facilities and you find that, if you do look at the proportion of diarrhea diseases, find that the ones that are heavily affected, with the diarrhea is the children that are under 5. Now, when it comes to centers like these, which are overcrowded and where access to safe water supply, is very bad, that puts them in a very, very bad situation that, they are very much prone, to these diarrheas because of the water that they are drinking and they are accessing because it's contaminated. And at the same time, we are also talking about issues of what we call water-washed diseases. Because people only talk about waterborne diseases, but we also have what are called water-washed diseases. These are diseases, which affect individuals because they are not having or they are not practicing good hygiene, using water. So because there is no water, you find that children cannot be bathed, children cannot be cleaned, and because of that, they can easily develop what we call water-washed diseases. And the most common water-washed diseases is scabies. And I'm sure you've heard, that recently, I think in Malawi, a lot of children have been affected by scabies.
But what is government's take on this? Thanasius Sitolo is the WASH lead in the Ministry of Water and Sanitation.
What we are doing now is to map the areas where we have needs regarding water sanitation and hygiene, identify the needs and the proposed interventions that could be implemented so that we address the water sanitation and hygiene issues in the areas where people are displaced.
Now, do you agree that the situation is putting the lives of people, especially children, at risk?
Of course, it's our concern whenever we have challenges regarding the availability of access to safe water and the sanitation services. But it is our wish that we make sure that we have adequate services to prevent the spread of waterborne and water-related diseases. At the moment, we have tried our best that we have reduced the incidence of these diseases in most of the camps that have been active for the past 2 or 3 months.
And that's all I had for you in this episode of The Telescope. Impact of flooding on children living in flood survivor camps. I've been your host, Alinafe Mlamba. Thank you for subscribing. Goodbye for now.